Captain Arlen Voss stood on the bridge of the human scout ship Intrepid, staring at the star-studded void that stretched endlessly before him. Space had a way of making one feel both small and powerful at the same time. The hum of the ship's engines was a comforting presence, steady and predictable, unlike the mission ahead. He adjusted the straps of his tactical harness, not out of necessity but out of habit. Every movement was measured, every breath deliberate. The mission was clear: infiltrate the Zelari capital ship, reach the Queen, and eliminate her. Humanity had expanded into the stars, but they had met resistance in the form of the Zelari, a species known for intelligence, resilience, and unity that made human military strategies seem almost primitive. Arlen had faced the Zelari before, 10 years ago. It was not a battle he had wanted to remember, yet the memory clung stubbornly, like a shadow at noon. He remembered the flash of emerald eyes, the swift movements, and the moment his blaster had grazed the shoulder of a young Zelari commander. He had never known the commander's name, and now, looking back, he wondered if that single moment had rippled through the lives of their people in ways he could not imagine. It had left a scar, both literal and figurative. And now, 10 years later, he was being sent into the very heart of their civilization to confront the one who had risen to lead them. The navigation console beeped softly, drawing him out of his reverie. Approaching Zelari sector, the ship's AI announced in its calm, even tone. Sensors indicate heavy life-form activity on the primary vessel. No immediate threat detected. Arlen nodded, running a hand through his short, dark hair. "Prepare the infiltration drones," he said. His voice was steady, though his heart beat faster than usual. Every mission carried risk, but this one carried history. He knew the Zelari were intelligent enough to detect patterns in human behavior. He had to be careful, precise, patient. The Queen was not just a target. She was a strategist, a ruler who had survived decades of internal strife and external pressure. Underestimating her would be a mistake. He reviewed the schematics of the capital ship again. Unlike human vessels, which prioritized firepower and speed, the Zelari focused on adaptability and defense. Their architecture was elegant, almost organic, with corridors that curved and shifted subtly, responding to movement and light. Surveillance nodes dotted the ship like constellations, each a potential challenge to his stealth. Arlen admired the design despite himself. It was a reminder that intelligence and creativity were universal traits. As the Intrepid approached the outskirts of the Zelari territory, Arlen recalled the training that had prepared him for this moment. He had spent months studying Zelari behavior, analyzing recordings, memorizing patterns. He knew the Queen would have guards, but more importantly, she would have eyes that saw beyond the obvious. Brute force would not succeed here. He had to use ingenuity, distraction, and patience, the true strengths of humanity. "Drones deployed," the AI reported. "Infiltration units operational." Arlen's fingers danced over the control panel, guiding the small, spherical drones through the entry point he had identified. Each one moved silently, slipping past sensors, avoiding motion-triggered alarms. He felt a strange sense of connection with these machines, as if they were an extension of his own mind. Every successful maneuver was a small victory, a proof that human ingenuity could match alien precision. Hours passed in tense silence. Arlen monitored the drones as they relayed images and data back to the bridge. Each corridor, each chamber, was a puzzle to solve. He had expected resistance, but the calm he encountered was almost eerie. The Zelari guards moved methodically, yet with a grace that made them seem less like soldiers and more like dancers performing a ritual of defense. Arlen noted every movement, every pause, storing the information for when he would need to navigate the corridors himself. As he worked, memories of that long-ago battle crept back. The Zelari commander he had scarred had been young, fierce, and unyielding. Arlen had admired that determination even as he fought against it. He had never expected to meet that same life again, elevated to the highest position in an alien hierarchy. The thought both unsettled and intrigued him. What kind of life had she led in the decades since their encounter? What decisions had shaped her into a leader? The Intrepid drifted closer to the docking bay. Arlen's heartbeat quickened. This was the point of no return. The drones confirmed that the bay doors were unguarded, likely relying on automated security systems. He took a deep breath and activated his own stealth module, allowing him to slip out of the ship and onto the surface of the Zelari vessel. The texture of the hull beneath his hands was smooth, almost living, responding subtly to his touch. He could feel the pulse of energy flowing through it, like a quiet heartbeat of the ship itself. Inside, the corridors twisted and turned, just as the schematics had indicated. Arlen moved carefully, relying on the patterns he had memorized. Each turn, each junction was calculated. He observed the Zelari guards from a distance, noting their routines and anticipating their reactions. Every observation was a lesson, every step a demonstration of patience. Humanity had endured countless challenges, not because they were the strongest, but because they adapted, learned, and thought creatively. He paused in a chamber filled with soft, bioluminescent light. The beauty of the environment struck him. The Zelari had created spaces that were not only functional, but also inspiring, reminding anyone who entered that intelligence and art could coexist. Arlen felt a pang of respect. This mission was no longer just about following orders. It was about understanding, navigating, and engaging with a culture that had flourished in ways humanity was only beginning to imagine. Hours turned into a long, silent vigil as he moved deeper into the ship. He encountered small challenges, locked doors, sensory fields, and automated patrols, but each was overcome through observation and ingenuity rather than force. He used sound redirection, shadows, and holographic decoys to bypass obstacles. Every success reinforced his belief in the value of human creativity. Eventually, he reached a chamber that seemed different from the rest. It was larger, more open, and the air carried a faint warmth. He paused at the entrance, knowing instinctively that he had reached the heart of the vessel. Beyond this room lay the Queen, the figure he had been sent to confront. And yet, even as he prepared himself, he felt something unexpected, anticipation not of battle but of understanding. He remembered the scar he had left all those years ago. He had not thought about it often, but the memory had never faded. It had been a small wound, insignificant in the moment, yet it had marked a turning point in their history. Now, the thought of it stirred a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. What would she think of him? How had that encounter shaped the life she led? Arlen took another deep breath and moved forward, letting the shadows guide him. He was aware of every sound, every shift in the light. Each step was a calculated risk, a demonstration of human precision and patience. As he reached the threshold of the throne chamber, he paused, sensing that the moment of truth was near. The chamber itself was unlike anything he had imagined. The architecture flowed organically, curves and angles merging seamlessly. Soft light glowed from the walls, casting gentle reflections on polished surfaces. At the center, a figure stood, clad in armor that shimmered faintly. The Queen. Arlen's eyes were drawn to the posture, the subtle movements, and the presence that radiated authority. There was a grace to her that spoke of experience, of battles fought and survived, of leadership earned. Yet beneath it, he sensed something more, a trace of familiarity, a connection that transcended the role of adversary. He knew he had reached the critical moment of his mission. The orders were clear, the stakes high, but the path forward was uncertain. He could rely on force, as countless humans had in similar situations, but the thought felt hollow. He had come here not just as a soldier, but as a human, capable of reasoning, empathy, and understanding. The next step would define not only the outcome of the mission, but perhaps the future of human-Zelari relations. For a long moment, Arlen simply observed, letting the calm of the chamber sink in. The Queen shifted slightly, and for a fraction of a second he thought he saw recognition in her stance, a flicker of memory that reached across the years. The scar, the battle, the shared history, they were threads connecting past and present, human and Zelari. Arlen knew that the story was about to change, that the mission would take a turn beyond what any orders could dictate. He was ready to step forward, ready to face the consequences of understanding rather than aggression. And in that moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see whether human ingenuity and empathy could triumph in the heart of an alien empire. Captain Arlen Voss stepped into the throne chamber cautiously, every sense alert. The soft hum of energy from the Zelari vessel filled the space, creating a quiet rhythm that seemed almost alive. His eyes were drawn to the figure in the center, the Queen, clad in shimmering armor that reflected the bioluminescent glow of the walls. Her posture was regal, unwavering, yet there was a stillness that felt different from the usual rigidity of a ruler anticipating conflict. He had expected hostility, even fear. Instead, there was a pause, a moment suspended in time where both of them studied each other. Arlen felt a flicker of recognition deep inside him, an echo of memory he hadn't anticipated. There was something familiar about the way she moved, the subtle tilt of her head as she regarded him. Slowly, the Queen raised her hands and began to remove the armor that had concealed her for so long. Piece by piece, she revealed herself, until only a sleek, organic suit remained. And then he saw it, a faint, jagged scar across her shoulder, the same one he had caused 10 years ago during that long-ago skirmish. Arlen froze, his breath caught. Memories of that day flashed vividly. The young Zelari commander, agile and determined, striking without hesitation. The moment his blaster had grazed her shoulder. The way she had faltered briefly, but then recovered with an almost impossible resilience. That scar was a testament to survival, to pain endured and lessons learned. And now it lay before him, proof of his own past influence on a life that had grown into the very leader he had been sent to kill. The Queen's eyes met his, and in them Arlen saw recognition. Not hatred, not fear, but acknowledgement. She had survived and she remembered. He felt a strange mix of awe and unease. She was no longer just a target, she was a person shaped in part by his actions. And yet she did not move aggressively, did not reach for a weapon. She simply stood there calm, observing him as if measuring the man he had become. "You remember me," he said quietly, unable to mask the weight of the memory in his voice. The Queen's gaze sharpened, but there was no anger in it. Only a quiet acknowledgement, a recognition of history. "I remember," she replied. Her voice was melodic, resonant, and surprisingly calm. "I have not forgotten the day you struck me. You changed my path in ways you cannot imagine." Arlen swallowed. He had anticipated hostility, confrontation, perhaps even negotiation, but not this. The mission had been framed in terms of elimination, orders, consequences, the black and white clarity of duty. And yet here he was, confronted with complexity, history, and a living reminder of his own actions. He studied her carefully, noticing details he might never have seen in a life-or-death confrontation. The subtle tension in her shoulders, the faint warmth in her eyes, the quiet grace that radiated from her every movement. She was a leader, yes, but also someone who had lived, endured, and adapted. Humanity had always prided itself on resilience, creativity, and empathy, and here was a reflection of those traits mirrored in an alien life form. "What do you want?" Arlen asked finally. His voice was steady, though his mind raced. The Queen tilted her head slightly, considering him. "I want to understand," she said simply. "I have been told you came to end me, to erase the one who stood against your people, but I see you now and I wonder, why?" Arlen took a deep breath. This was not the time for a rehearsed explanation, nor could he offer the justification of orders alone. "I was sent to eliminate a threat," he said. "I followed instructions. But the closer I came, the more I realized that the situation is not as simple as anyone made it seem. I see you as more than a target. I see the person you have become." The Queen regarded him silently, and then a subtle shift occurred. Her stance softened just enough to indicate curiosity rather than aggression. "And what do you see?" she asked. Arlen hesitated, searching for the right words. "I see someone who survived, someone who adapted. Someone capable of intelligence, creativity, and leadership beyond what we imagined possible. And I see a life shaped in part by choices I made, both careless and deliberate. That scar, it is proof of our shared history." A faint smile touched the corners of her mouth, almost imperceptible. "It is strange, is it not," she said softly, "that a single moment, a single act can echo through years and change the paths of countless lives. I bear the mark of your weapon, and yet I am here. I am the queen of my people, and you stand in front of me, alive, human, capable of reflection and thought." The air between them seemed charged, not with hostility, but with understanding. For the first time in the decade since that skirmish, Arlen felt the weight of the past settle beside the potential of the future. Humanity had often relied on brute force, but here, in this chamber, he understood that their true power lay in intellect, in foresight, in the ability to navigate complexity with care. "I did not come here to learn this," he admitted. "I came with a mission. But I see now that a mission can blind us to possibilities. I have the chance to change outcomes without violence. And perhaps that is a strength of our kind, choosing reason over force, empathy over orders." The Queen nodded slowly. "And that is why you are human. You have the capacity to reflect, to consider, to choose. My people have learned caution, strategy, and patience, but we have also seen that wisdom is not only in survival. It is in understanding others, in dialogue, in cooperation." Arlen felt a surge of relief, tempered by responsibility. This was a moment that required careful navigation. He could act recklessly, fulfill his orders, and spark a conflict that neither side truly wanted. Or he could approach the situation with thoughtfulness, with creativity, with patience. The choice was his and his alone. For hours they engaged in careful conversation. Arlen learned about the Queen's life over the past decade, the challenges she had faced, the decisions she had made, and the burdens of leadership that weighed on her shoulders. He shared cautiously fragments of human experience, the expansion into space, the drive to explore, the recognition that intelligence alone did not guarantee survival. Each exchange built a bridge between their worlds, one that relied not on force but on mutual understanding. There were moments of tension, of course. Arlen knew that any misstep could trigger defensive instincts, either from the Queen herself or from her advisors. And yet, he found that dialogue could be a tool as powerful as any weapon. He asked questions, listened carefully, and demonstrated respect. In turn, the Queen responded with openness, revealing the intricacies of Zelari thought and culture. At one point, Arlen gestured toward the scar. "This mark," he said, "reminds me of my own mistakes. It reminds me that actions have consequences, often unforeseen. I see it now as a lesson not just for you but for both of our peoples." The Queen studied him thoughtfully. "Indeed, that scar is not just pain, it is memory, experience, growth. It reminds me of the strength I carry, the wisdom I have gained. And perhaps it is also a reminder that our choices shape the future in ways we cannot always predict." As the conversation continued, Arlen realized that the mission was no longer about elimination. The Queen's presence, her intelligence, her willingness to engage in dialogue, all underscored a larger truth. Humanity's strength was not in destruction, but in creativity, empathy, and the ability to envision outcomes beyond immediate orders. He felt a deep respect for her resilience, and in that respect, he saw the potential for cooperation rather than conflict. Time passed differently in the throne chamber. Minutes stretched into hours as they explored ideas, shared experiences, and acknowledged the echoes of their shared past. Arlen reflected on the young Zelari commander he had injured, and marveled at how that single act had helped shape a life capable of extraordinary leadership. It was a reminder that influence came in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest impact was made not through force, but through the unintended consequences of one's actions. Finally, the Queen spoke, her tone calm but firm. "Captain Voss, you have come with orders with intent with history between us, yet you have chosen reflection over aggression. That is rare, that is human, and it is also valuable." Arlen nodded. He felt the weight of the moment, the responsibility of choice. "I see now that the future can be shaped by dialogue, not destruction. I do not want to fulfill orders that would harm lives unnecessarily. There must be another way." The Queen regarded him silently for a long moment, and then a subtle smile appeared. "Perhaps there is. Perhaps our peoples can find common ground despite the past. Perhaps your presence here is not a threat but an opportunity." For the first time, Arlen felt a sense of hope that went beyond duty. He had entered the Zelari vessel as a soldier, a mission-driven human. And now he was standing at the threshold of possibility, an opportunity to prove that human ingenuity, patience, and empathy could bridge worlds, heal old wounds, and create alliances where none had seemed possible. The scar, the memory, the years of distance, they all converged in that chamber, reminding him that history was not just a record of what had been, but a guide to what could be. He realized that the true mission was not elimination, but understanding. And in that understanding lay the potential for something far greater than any victory achieved through violence. The chance to change the course of history through thoughtfulness, cooperation, and respect. As the throne chamber's soft lights reflected on the walls, Arlen and the Queen shared a silent acknowledgement. They were adversaries, yes, but also survivors, thinkers, and leaders. The future of both their peoples might depend on the choices made in this very room, on the willingness to listen, to learn, and to trust. And for the first time, Arlen believed that humanity's true power was not in weapons, but in wisdom. Captain Arlen Voss remained in the throne chamber, his mind racing with possibilities. The Queen's words had settled like a calm in a storm, and yet the weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon him. He had come with orders, with a mission framed in black and white, and now, standing before the Zelari Queen, he realized that the world was rarely so simple. The scar, the history, the shared past, they were all reminders that choices mattered, and that understanding often carried more power than any weapon. The Queen studied him carefully, her eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and cautious hope. "You speak of cooperation," she said softly, "but trust is fragile, Captain Voss. Humans and Zelari have clashed many times. How can I be sure your intentions are genuine?" Arlen straightened, meeting her gaze without hesitation. "I cannot demand your trust," he admitted. "But I can offer transparency. I can show that I am not here to strike, not here to destroy. My goal is understanding, dialogue, and a chance for our peoples to find common ground. That is the only path that makes sense to me now." The Queen considered his words, then nodded slowly. "Words alone are fragile," she said. "Actions speak louder. What do you propose, Captain?" Arlen took a deep breath. He had spent years preparing for conflict, but now he realized that the most important strategy was one of intelligence, communication, and innovation. "We begin with observation," he suggested. "Let our peoples share knowledge, ideas, and technology. Let us find solutions to problems that threaten both sides. If we can demonstrate cooperation in practice, perhaps we can build the trust that words alone cannot create." The Queen's eyes glimmered with interest. A test of wisdom and patience, she mused. Very well. But know this, any misstep could have consequences. We Zelari value foresight and mistakes are costly. Arlen nodded solemnly. I understand, and we will proceed carefully together. With that understanding, the first steps of collaboration began. The Queen led him through the inner chambers of the ship, introducing him to advisors, scientists, and strategists. Arlen noticed the efficiency with which they worked, their focus on learning and innovation. The Zelari had faced many threats over the years, and they had adapted with intelligence rather than brute force. He saw a reflection of human potential in them, the same drive to survive, to grow, and to create solutions. He began to share human innovations, technologies designed for exploration, energy efficiency, and sustainable systems. The Zelari responded with fascination, offering their own knowledge of long-range navigation, environmental adaptation, and bioengineering. The exchange was careful, deliberate, and respectful. Both sides were learning, adjusting, and finding new ways to cooperate. As days passed, Arlen and the Queen met frequently, discussing strategies to protect both human and Zelari colonies from potential threats. They debated, brainstormed, and refined plans, each recognizing the strengths and limitations of the other's species. Arlen marveled at the Queen's intellect and foresight. She was more than a ruler. She was a visionary, capable of seeing connections and consequences that humans might overlook. And yet, she valued his perspective, respecting the human capacity for creativity, adaptability, and empathy. One evening, as the artificial sun dimmed in the central chamber, Arlen and the Queen stood overlooking the sprawling viewports that revealed distant stars. The silence between them was comfortable, reflective, and full of unspoken understanding. You have changed the course of many lives, the Queen said quietly. Not just mine. The scar you left, it could have been a mark of hatred or revenge, but instead, it became a reminder of resilience and survival. That is not something every human would understand. Arlen shook his head. I acted without thinking at the time. I did not know the impact it would have, but now I see that every action has weight, every choice shapes the future, and I want to make choices that create opportunities, not destruction. The Queen's expression softened, and that is why I consider you an ally, perhaps even a bridge between our peoples. They spent the next weeks developing practical initiatives. Human engineers and Zelari scientists worked together to improve space station designs, enhance energy efficiency, and develop new communication protocols. Cultural exchanges allowed both species to share stories, history, and art, building empathy and appreciation. For Arlen, it was a revelation. The true power of humanity was not in weapons or domination, but in thoughtfulness, creativity, and the ability to reach across divides with respect and intelligence. Despite the progress, challenges remained. Skepticism existed on both sides. Human commanders monitored Arlen's activities, wary of trusting an alien leader. Zelari advisors debated the wisdom of engaging with humans. Arlen faced delicate situations, needing to mediate disagreements and maintain the fragile trust that had been established. Each day was a test of patience, diplomacy, and ingenuity. One day, while reviewing a joint energy project, a young Zelari engineer approached Arlen hesitantly. Captain Voss, she said, her voice soft, the humans have shared new data on the solar matrix. It could improve our colony's efficiency significantly, but some in our council doubt the humans' intentions. They fear you may be using knowledge as leverage. Arlen smiled gently. I understand their caution, but trust is built over time, not given freely. We show through actions, not promises. Let them see that collaboration brings benefit to all. The engineer nodded, relief evident on her face. I will convey that to the council. Thank you, Captain. In parallel, Arlen corresponded with human leadership, reporting progress carefully. He emphasized not just technological gains, but the importance of dialogue, empathy, and mutual understanding. Leaders on both sides began to recognize that cooperation could yield far greater results than conflict. The seeds of trust, once fragile, began to grow into a shared commitment to peace and innovation. Throughout this time, Arlen found moments to reflect. The scar he had once caused had become a symbol, not of pain, but of resilience and opportunity. It reminded him that humans had the capacity to influence, to shape, and to create. But more than that, it reminded him that responsibility accompanied every action. The choices he made now could define the future for countless lives. One afternoon, the Queen invited him to a quiet garden chamber within the ship. Soft lights illuminated plants that glowed faintly, a blend of Zelari bioengineering and natural life. The space was serene, a sanctuary from the pressures of leadership and diplomacy. "Captain," she said, gesturing to the garden, "this is a place for reflection. We Zelari believe that understanding oneself is the first step toward understanding others. You have shown patience, foresight, and creativity. These are qualities that can build bridges, not just between humans and Zelari, but between all who seek peace." Arlen looked around, taking in the gentle glow of the plants and the calm of the space. "I have learned much from you," he replied. "Not just about your people, but about the potential of humans as well. We have a long way to go, but perhaps this is the start of something greater." The Queen nodded, and for a moment they simply stood together, silent, contemplating the future. The scar, a relic of the past, had become a symbol of connection, reminding them both that history was not a burden but a guide. It spoke of resilience, adaptation, and the power of choice. Over time, small victories accumulated. Human and Zelari colonies reported improvements in efficiency, communication, and security. Joint scientific endeavors flourished. Cultural exchanges deepened mutual respect. And through it all, Arlen and the Queen maintained their dialogue, guiding their peoples with wisdom, creativity, and integrity. There were moments of doubt, of course. Some humans questioned the trust he placed in the Queen. Some Zelari wondered if humans could be relied upon. But Arlen remained steadfast, demonstrating through consistent action that collaboration, patience, and empathy were more powerful than fear or suspicion. One evening, as the artificial stars twinkled above the throne chamber, the Queen spoke quietly. "Captain Voss, you came to eliminate a threat, to change the course of history with a single act. Yet here we stand, not as enemies but as partners. It is proof that strength lies not in force, but in understanding and wisdom." Arlen nodded, feeling the truth of her words deeply. "I have learned that humans are most powerful when we choose thoughtfulness over aggression, creativity over destruction, and empathy over fear. That is the legacy I hope to leave, not a record of conquest but a record of collaboration." The Queen extended a hand, a gesture of mutual respect. "Then let us continue together, Captain. Let our people see what can be achieved when we work not against each other, but with each other." Arlen took her hand, sealing a bond that went beyond mission objectives, beyond orders, beyond history itself. They had transformed a scar, a moment of conflict, into a bridge between worlds. Humanity's ingenuity, patience, and empathy had not only averted violence, but had opened the door to a future where understanding, dialogue, and cooperation shaped the destiny of entire civilizations. As he looked out at the stars, Arlen felt a profound sense of hope. He realized that true human strength was not measured in firepower or conquest, but in the capacity to think, to reflect, to understand, and to act with wisdom. The scar on the Queen's shoulder would always remind him of the past, but it was the choices made in the present that would define the future. And in that quiet understanding, Captain Arlen Voss knew that humanity had not only survived, it had risen, proving that intelligence, empathy and creativity could shape the universe in ways far greater than any weapon could. For the first time in years, he smiled freely, knowing that the mission had been fulfilled in a way that no orders could ever anticipate. The past had led them here, but the future was theirs to build together.